Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The UN said peaceful protests should neither be prevented nor halted, as it was the case for the Medellin ship and the Maghrebian Sumud caravan is another act of solidarity heading to Rafah now. And the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territories said that there is mounting evidence that the Israeli occupation is carrying out a deliberate and systematic campaign to eliminate Palestinian life in Gaza. U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered the deployment of 700 U.S. Marines and 2,000 additional National Guard troops to LA in response to ongoing protests over recent immigration arrests. And those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. I'm Asia Bakar. Good afternoon. Al Jaish magazine has said in its latest edition that Algeria will be able to overcome all challenges, both internal and external, thanks to the effectiveness of her defense system and the deep-rooted patriotism of her citizens, as well as the pivotal role played by her diplomacy. Mr. Sharfi has the details.
In this month's edition, the magazine mentioned in its editorial entitled High Level of Professionalism Shaped by Values of Self-Sacrifice that it is certain that thanks to the effectiveness of its defense system and the instilling of sincere patriots with the values of belonging to and loyalty towards the homeland, as well as the central role of our active diplomacy and tireless efforts to promote the process of comprehensive national rebirth, our country will be able to meet all challenges, both internal and external. It added that the country will continue to progress economically and rise strategically, while the enemies, like their predecessors throughout history, will drag the shreds of failure, taste the bitterness of defeat, and suffer the reversal of their vile plots, as highlighted during a recent visit to the 2nd Military Region by the Army General Said Shingriha, Deputy Minister of National Defense and Chief of Staff of the People's National Army. The magazine pointed out the Army's constant readiness to confront and defeat any threat that could affect the security of the homeland. Simultaneously, our country is making tireless efforts through active diplomacy aimed at restoring political and security stability in our neighborhood, which is experiencing recurrent unrest in accordance with its steadfast principles based on good neighborly relations, the rejection of any interference in the internal affairs of states, respect for their national sovereignty and territorial integrity, the peaceful settlement of disputes and crises, the primacy of dialogue and negotiation, and the rejection of logic of arms. Al Jaish concluded that in addition to its firm commitment to fight against terrorism and cross-border organized crime, which are among the major challenges facing our region, Algeria's comprehensive approach to this issue goes further, encompassing the economic dimension through the promotion of development in its regional environment, providing humanitarian aid and financing regional development projects, thereby helping to thwart all plans aimed at undermining the security and stability of the region.
And in New York, the 8-3+ group, including Algeria at the Security Council, welcomed the peaceful political transition processes in Central Africa, considering them to be significant progress towards strengthening democratic governance, national reconciliation, and restoring trust. Jamal Salmani has the details.
In a statement read by Sierra Leone's permanent representative to the UN Ambassador Imran Khanoun, on behalf of the A3 group, he hailed the positive developments in the region.
On the political front, the A3 Plus welcomes the positive development in the region, including the peaceful political transition in Chad, Gabon, and Sao Tome and Principe. These transitions represent significant progress towards strengthening democratic governance, advancing national reconciliation, and building public trust. We particularly commend the conduct of the recent presidential elections in Gabon and the preparations on the way for the legislative and local elections. The opening of political space in Chad and Gabon, including the increasing representation of women in both executive and legislative branches, is an encouraging sign of inclusivity and democratic consolidation. In this regard, the A3 Plus urges all countries in the region to continue engaging constructively and inclusively with all national stakeholders to address political challenges, including those relating to freedom of expression and association.
Regarding the security situation in the Lake Chad Basin, the A3 stressed that this region remained a source of concern. The A3 also expressed concern about the repercussions of the conflict in Sudan and the Democratic Republic of the Congo on neighboring countries.
The security situation in the Lake Chad Basin remains deeply concerning. Persistent attacks by armed groups and the continued threat posed by Boko Haram and its affiliate have had devastating impact on civilian populations, undermining peace building and socio-economic recovery. We unequivocally condemn these attacks and reiterate the imperative for accountability. We commend the multinational joint task force for its sustained operations to counter terrorism and trans-border criminal activities. We are also concerned by the spillover effect of the conflict in Sudan and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which have significantly strained the capacities of neighboring countries, such as Chad and the Central African Republic, to host displaced populations. We therefore underscore the urgent need for scale-up international support for humanitarian response efforts, alongside intensified diplomatic initiatives to address the root causes of this conflict and foster durable peace.
The A3 group also recalled the dynamic role of the African Union in peace and security efforts in the region, reaffirming its support for the United Nations Regional Office for Central Africa.
The A3 Plus underscores the vital role of the African Union in addressing the region's peace and security challenges. It is essential that regional initiatives led by the Lake Chad Basin Commission, ECAS, and the Economic and Monetary Community of Central Africa be fully integrated and supported in collective efforts to tackle shared challenges. The A3 Plus reaffirms its strong support for UNOCA and remains committed to working in partnership to advance peace, stability, and development in the Central African region.
The A3 Plus group welcomed the decision by the Economic Community of Central African States to create a humanitarian aid fund, urging all partners to support this regional initiative and contribute generously to the 2025 Humanitarian Response Plan.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and the Polisario Front has reaffirmed that all attempts to bypass the rights of the Sahrawi people are doomed to utter failure, stressing that the question of Western Sahara being a decolonization issue cannot be resolved outside the framework of the exercise of the right to self-determination and independence. Ms. Ouchorfi.
This came in a statement that crowned the meeting of the Permanent Bureau of the National Secretariat of the Polisario Front held Monday under the chairmanship of the Sahrawi President and Secretary General of the Front, Mr. Ibrahim Ghali. The Sahrawi press agency SPS reported that the meeting cautioned against Moroccan action and their backers, which undermine peace efforts in Western Sahara and violate international law. The statement emphasized that such moves risk global stability but will not stop the Sahrawi people's ongoing legitimate fight for their rights. The Front's Permanent Bureau also renewed its call on the Security Council to honor its commitments and assume its responsibilities in compelling the Moroccan occupier to immediately lift the obstacles preventing the United Nations missions for the referendum in Western Sahara, MINURSO, from carrying out the mission for which it was established. On this occasion, the statement saluted the steadfastness of the Sahrawi civilian prisoners and their defiance of the inhumane conditions imposed on them and their families by the Moroccan occupier. It also noted the broad international solidarity with their cause as demonstrated by the global campaign demanding their immediate and unconditional release. The statement further called on the Sahrawi people to strengthen unity, remain vigilant, and uphold organizational discipline in order to thwart the objectives and aims of the psychological warfare waged by the enemy.
And to the Middle East now. In Gaza, 8 Palestinian civilians, including a child, have been killed by the Israeli occupation forces near an aid center in Rafah, south of the Gaza Strip. Medical sources reported that 12-year-old Mohammed Khalil al-Atamna was killed near an aid distribution center in the central Gaza Strip. 7 other citizens were also killed and others wounded by the Israeli occupation. This came while the UN reiterates that civilians must always be protected, adding that no person anywhere should be forced to choose between risking one's life and feeding one's family. Meanwhile, the bodies of 54 dead and 305 wounded arrived at Gaza hospitals over the past 24 hours. Still in Gaza, the World Health Organization said the Al-Amal hospital in Gaza, one of the few still operating in the Palestinian territory, is now virtually out of service due to intense military activity. The WHO's Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus said access to the hospital is obstructed, preventing new patients from reaching care and leading to more preventable deaths. Tedros said 2 emergency medical teams, one local, the other international, are still doing their best to serve the remaining patients with the limited medical supplies left on the premises. And now the activists aboard the Freedom Flotilla coalition's ship, the Madeleine, have been detained and some of them deported already by the Israeli occupation forces. Mariam Barshi has the details.
The Madeleine, the ship that sailed from Sicily to Gaza in solidarity with Gazans undergoing a blockade and deprived of any kind of aid, has been intercepted by the Israeli occupying forces in international waters. Israeli soldiers boarded the Madeleine and detained the 12 activists before starting the deportation process. Speaking in a briefing on the Israeli occupation boarding the Madeleine and preventing it from reaching Gaza, the deputy spokesperson for the Secretary General, Farhan Haq, said peaceful protests should neither be prevented nor halted.
Obviously, we have always stood in favor of peaceful protest and believe that authorities should allow peaceful protesters to go about their activity without harm. It would be a tremendous concern if that was being flouted. But having said that, of course, we're going to continue to monitor the situation. We'll need to see what the relevant procedures are in place.
He added that the Israeli occupation is not entitled to denying access of any kind of humanitarian aid into Gaza, and the UN holds it accountable for hindering the safety of Gazans.
Well, I just talked about what Israel's position as an occupying power entails. To reiterate, it's very clear that it bears responsibility for the safety of the population. It bears responsibility to making sure that essential supplies get in to meet humanitarian aid, and so we will hold them to that. Above and beyond that, what we have made clear, and the Secretary General has said this repeatedly, is that humanitarian aid must be able to enter Gaza swiftly and at scale to reach all people in need wherever they are in the Strip. That is something that the activists on the Madeleine were also talking about, and this is something that deserves to be at the forefront of international attention. There's 2 million people, and we've said that the entire population of Gaza is at risk of hunger. That's an overwhelming amount of humanitarian need, and we need to have this dealt with as soon as possible.
The UN official also highlighted that intercepting a ship in international waters violates international law.
All aid that is intended to go to the people of Gaza needs to go to the people of Gaza. They are in a situation of critical need, and it would be terrible if there's further hindrances being placed on aid that's meant to go to them. Regarding where the ship was held, we would need to be able to verify where exactly the ship had been detained. But obviously, the importance of ensuring that ships travel without hindrance on international waters is a critical part of international law.
Though intercepted and denied access into Gaza, the Madeleine succeeded in raising more awareness on the serious and dire situation of Palestinians in Gaza and inspired similar acts of solidarity to break the siege.
Meanwhile, the Sumud or Resilience Convoy has set off from Tunis on its journey to the Gaza Strip with the participation of a number of activists seeking to break the blockade imposed by the Israeli occupation on Gaza. The convoy carries people from Maghreb countries, including Algeria, of course. The official spokesperson for the Sumud or Resilience Convoy, Wael Nawar, said the convoy conveys a message to all free peoples around the world to take action for the Palestinian people's right and reject all forms of occupation and genocide.
It's a demonstration or a Maghreb independent people's gathering which will stop in many countries up to Egypt. It will interact with citizens, defend the Palestinian cause, and mobilize the populations. It will also remind everyone that Palestine is not only a topic on social media, but it is a few days' walk from our countries. The Arab peoples must therefore remember that we are from a single land and a single people.
The convoy passes through several Tunisian regions and states before entering Libya in coordination with Libyan humanitarian organizations. It will then head to the Saloum crossing in eastern Libya and then enter Egyptian territory. And now the United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territories has accused and said that Israel is committing genocide by targeting civilians sheltering in schools and religious sites in Gaza as part of what it described as systematic campaign to erase Palestinian life. Jamal Salmani tells us more.
The commission, led by former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Navi Pillay, is set to present its full report to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva on June 17. She said there is mounting evidence that Israel is carrying out a deliberate and systematic campaign to eliminate Palestinian life in Gaza. She added that the targeting of Palestinian educational, cultural, and religious life would have lasting consequences for current and future generations, undermining their right to self-determination. According to its latest findings, Israel has destroyed more than 90% of school and university buildings in Gaza, along with over half of the enclave's religious and cultural sites. The report also concludes that the occupying Israeli forces have committed war crimes, including deliberate attacks on civilians and the killing of people seeking shelter in educational and religious facilities. The damage to the Palestinian education system, the Commission notes, is not confined to Gaza. It highlights a rise in Israeli military operations in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, as well as increasing harassment of students and settler violence.
And now Iran has said that it will soon hand a counter-proposal for a nuclear deal to the United States in response to U.S. offer that Tehran deems unacceptable, while U.S. President Donald Trump said talks would continue. Trump made clear that the two sides remained at odds over whether the country would be allowed to continue enriching uranium on Iranian soil. The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson said there was no detail about the timing of a sixth round of talks, while President Trump said the next round of talks would take place on Thursday, despite Iranian official and the U.S. official said Thursday was unlikely. And now President Donald Trump has ordered the deployment of 700 active duty U.S. Marines and 2,000 additional National Guard troops to Los Angeles in response to ongoing protests over recent immigration arrests. The demonstrations, now in their fourth day, were sparked by dozens of arrests carried out by federal immigration agents in the city, home to large Latino and immigrant communities. Trump warned that demonstrations would face a tougher response than before, justifying the deployment as a measure to regain control and maintain a public order. However, the move has drawn backlash from California officials. Still listening to Radio Algeria International, the third United Nations Conference of the Oceans has kicked off in the southern French coastal city of Nice under the theme Accelerating Action and Mobilizing All Stakeholders for the Conservation and Sustainable Use of the Ocean. Mariam Barshi has the details.
The conference, jointly organized by France and Costa Rica, brings together government delegations from UN member states as well as stakeholders from international organizations, the research community, civil society, and the private sector to discuss global ocean governance. The conference aims to support the implementation of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 14, SDG 14, conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas and marine resources for sustainable development. Speaking during the opening session, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called on countries to agree to a treaty on plastic pollution this year.
Since the last UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon, we have seen progress. We have also seen a growing awareness of the deep interconnection between preserving biodiversity and marine ecosystems, combating climate change and stopping pollution. The Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework set a bold pledge to conserve and manage at least 30% of marine and coastal areas by 2030. Member states also adopted the Agreement on Marine Biological Diversity of Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction, a historic breakthrough. I urge all delegations to ratify it and welcome the good news given by President Macron and the momentum this conference is generating towards its swift entry into force. I also call on all countries to agree on an ambitious and legally binding treaty on plastic pollution this year. It is also essential to successfully conclude the agreement on fisheries currently discussed at the World Trade Organization. The International Maritime Organization committed to reach net zero emissions from shipping by 2050.
The conference, which runs until Friday, will include 10 plenary sessions and will culminate with an intergovernmental declaration which will be adopted together with a list of voluntary commitments and will be called the Nice Ocean Action Plan.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. That's it for our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to this program devoted to World Blood Donor Day, compiled and presented by Mohammed Khatel.